Okay, great. Let's get started. Um, Andres just was the one that was just speaking now, and he can introduce himself. Maybe you can introduce yourself first, Andres, and then I'll introduce myself.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Andres. I am a first year multimedia student. I originally from California, so the southern part of the state, and I am one of the J peers this year. So I will be here just helping out for the admissions department. We will be having events throughout the year, throughout application season. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to email us. We'll be putting our contact info towards the end, and we also have Friday meetups with me and my fellow JPer.
Great. Yes, so my name is Nellie. If you've been receiving emails, you've probably seen my name. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm the director of admissions here at Berkeley Journalism. So if you have questions, you'll most likely be reaching out to me first or potentially Andres as one of our J peers here on the admissions team. But yes, welcome. Just quickly, a little bit about who we are. You can see pictured here Andres as well. And then anyways, you see a bunch of us here, and this is the staff that represent and make the J School run and make it as enigmatic and as powerful as we are today. We would not be here without them. I'm sure if you come to campus, many of you will meet them. This is our class of 2026. So who are you? Just speaking to kind of the diversity of the student body. And Andres is part of this incoming class as well. So he will be a great resource to speak to, just what we're looking for here at Berkeley Journalism. Okay, for today, I'm trying to keep this very short and brief, and so I'll try to keep this to probably 30 minutes at most, and leave the rest to you all to ask your questions. But this is going to be very specific to the application process and then also funding opportunities here. So if you're looking to learn more about the program in general, I would recommend joining the next webinar, which will be on next Tuesday, October 8th. That'll be more related to just introducing the overall program and then also hearing from our career development director, Betsy Raitt, who is amazing. And she'll speak a little bit to the program and what the offerings look like once you're a student here. Yeah. So just to make that clear that this will not be really introducing the program, it will be more focused on if you're an applicant or you're considering starting the application. This is, how we'll kind of step-by-step guide, as well as the funding opportunities if you do apply. So quickly, our mission is to expand the worldwide impact of truth-seeking, fact-based, and inclusive journalism by training the next generation of diverse journalists to become exceptional storytellers and industry leaders. This is something that's very close to us, very near and dear to us, especially as you speak with faculty or current students or alumni through many of the sessions we'll have over the next few months. I think this will become very apparent as well, but just keep this in mind as you're also looking to complete your application. So very quickly, why Berkeley? We are a top public university here, um, in, not only the US, but in the world. What this means for you guys is that, in terms of having a reputation and being out in a competitive job market, having that competitive edge can mean a big difference, getting your foot in the door in a lot of conversations, a lot of newsrooms and organizations. And also our location is really like no other. We are just 15 miles away from the Bay, the San Francisco. We actually have students and we have student housing in San Francisco, actually. We're in the Bay, so the East Bay to be specific, but essentially we're also near Silicon Valley, Napa Valley, all of these amazing opportunities to just be close to where things are happening, where dialogue is happening. and yeah, where innovation, is happening. So yeah. Also, it helps that the weather is really nice here, like all year long. Like I think the coldest it gets is really like in the 50s in the winter. And generally it's like in the 60s. So it is really, really nice to just have like generally sunny weather and it never be super hot here, although it is kind of hot right now. Okay. Oh, the other thing I wanted to add is that we were actually ranked number 2 public university in the country, but also we are ranked number 5 globally in the U.S. News Global rankings. So we are, again, that reputation precedes us as a research institution and in inviting innovation and yeah, and again, what makes us really makes us different, I would say, is that we are a diverse community of curious, driven, independent thinkers and makers who believe that truth matters and that every important story must be earned. Um, Here pictured, you can see our dean, Geeta Anand, with some of the fellows. Actually, some of these are all fellows. So Andres could speak to that too, our fellowships. But these here pictured were graduates last year of from a range of I think these are specifically dean's fellows, like Andres. But yeah, so he can speak more to that as well. But the other key thing I would say is that we're just under 60 students a year. So our cohort size is really small. That makes for a really intimate, tight-knit community within your cohort, and as well a lot more attention from your faculty, from your peers. So you're really going to get a very hands-on experience here. The other thing is that we do our best to help bridge the gaps and for our students so that they are able to make their dream come true. If, their dream is to come here, then we really do our best to give them opportunities. And we'll talk more about the funding here. But yeah, just to allow them that opportunity to come here. So, lastly, it takes time to learn the skills you'll need. This is really speaking to the fact that what makes us unique is that we're a 2-year program. So most of the programs out there are a year or less. So they might be 9, 10, 11 months of less than a year-long program. And for us, I think, and when speaking to a lot of our current students and alumni, I think what really stood out to them is that we are purely focused on journalism. We really hone in on the skills, allow you to master those skills through a comprehensive list of classes, doing a summer internship, which is required as part of the program. And yeah, and that allows our students to build a portfolio of published work. So that will make them, allow them to be competitive when they're doing their job search. Yeah, so that is all I want to say about what makes us different. And then now we can dive straight into our admissions requirements. Maybe Andres, if you want to speak to this in the next few
Yeah,
slides.
of course. So Berkeley, as the university as a whole and the School of Journalism, really does put an emphasis on a holistic approach to your application. So those who have not encountered this like process, it mainly speaks to we're not only just looking at your academic preparedness and your experience as a journalist or things adjacent to it. We're also looking at all these other things, your merit, your academic success, what your background is like. And we really want to reflect that in our application process. So, of course, the minimum for academic preparedness for the school having a 3.0, it's a master's program, so obviously that's going to be related to some type of bachelor's program. um, and then as for your journalism experience, yes, we are a journalism school and we do have a lot of people who have had that experience. But if you're someone like myself who is coming from political science, social science, and has never written an actual story up until I got to the J school, there's still room for you. You just have to really showcase your efforts as and your ability to learn those journalist skills. So, um, yeah, to prepare for this application season, please be aware that we have a few deadlines and we don't want you to be confused. So, first, round one is on December 16th, and please make note of it at 8:59 p.m. Pacific time. That is in order to make sure that
or this first round is in order to make sure that people receive priority funding. So we are a large public university, which means a lot of our funding is tailored more towards students of California. But we do our best as an institution to try and see if there's ways that we can provide funding to even more students. And that December 16th deadline, treat it as if it's like your first deadline. Treat it as if like that's the one where you have to have all your application materials in. Because if you do not have a letter recommendation turned in or a work sample turned in, your application is not considered complete on that first cycle. So we really strongly urge that you do. If for those who might be interested in the public health concurrent minor or major or degree, or the I believe public health and public welfare, social welfare, sorry. That application is December 2nd. So it's a little bit earlier. So please keep that in mind. Round two, February 3rd, that is pretty much like the final deadline. So it's after our priority deadline on December 16th. As you can see, there's all these application materials here. I'm not going to go off and read each and every single one. But if you do have questions related to them, feel free to email us. Feel free to ask more in-depth questions. I know that on the Berkeley Graduate Division website, there's samples for statements of purpose and for personal history statements that could really benefit you to be able to like learn from and draw from. So, oh yeah, they're the concurrent degrees, public health and Asian studies. So that's just uh, uh, a uh, a tip. All right. So even more tips as Nellie's moving along. So selecting your specialization. So here at the J School, we have 5 tracks. That's what we call them, your specializations or tracks. So we have audio reporting, documentary, multimedia, narrative writing, and photojournalism. They're all pretty self-explanatory with additional information on our website. But please keep in mind that our documentary program, because of how intensive it is, as in you're learning all these new skills, whether you've had film experience or not, you are really diving deep into the documentary film track. And the program really wants you to showcase, or those for those prospective applicants, showcase your abilities in creating this type of field. So typically our documentary students specialize, like once they apply, that is their track. That is what they're focusing on during their master's program. But for the other tracks, audio reporting, for multimedia, I'm sorry, for narrative and for photojournalism, there's a lot of wiggle room. So if you say I really don't like just writing, maybe I want to add some like photography in there, there's some wiggle room to really like go around there. And then we have not that this is not the full list, obviously, but some beats that our students cover: business, climate change, data, investigative. We have a few programs here on related to the school, such as the investigative reporting program, where you can really dive deep into that investigative reporting topic, as well as a climate change lab if you're super interested in that. So we highly recommend that if you're interested and want to learn more about these beats and specializations, take a look at our website. And we're also going to try and host a series where you could speak to our faculty about these beats, about these specializations, if you want to learn a little bit more during the application process.
Yes, thank you, Andres. That's really helpful. One more thing that I do want to note here is that if you are interested in, for example, the documentary program, I do recommend just to be aware that you need to outrightly apply for that program. So it's not something that you can suddenly decide later on if you've already submitted your application that you do want to be considered for documentary, just because we do have a certain level of technical expertise that is required for that program. So that's also something we'll talk more about related to your samples of work samples and how you can select those as it relates to your specialization or concentration that you're considering applying to. But the documentary is the only one that you need to kind of indicate right away. And you can also select in the application, it will say like if you're not admitted to doc, are you open to being considered kind of for general admission? And so you can indicate that and say yes or no, but just to let you know that applying to the doc concentrate program, you can only do that once. So just to be really clear on that. And you do need to have relevant experience to be, I would say, a competitive applicant. for the doc program. Everything else you can declare later. So even if you select, as Andre said, narrative writing, you could, after taking some courses here, decide by the end of your first year, which is when you need to declare that concentration that, oh, actually, I took some audio courses and found it really interesting. I actually want to make that be where my master thesis project, revolves around that media platform. So yeah, keep that in mind. This is also just to give you some kind of like some additional insight into what our students go into career-wise after they, specialize. Again, you could take courses in photojournalism, narrative writing, investigative reporting, which again is not a track, but is, something you could, a beat essentially, or a topical area that you could do in tandem. So just to keep in mind that obviously there's flexibility with this and a lot of our students might go into freelance, for instance, right? So it really will depend, but this is just to give you some insight into potentially, if you go into documentary, you are probably going to be looking at, cinematography or, directing, producing, right? If you're looking at multimedia, you might go into, a different kind of range, or a lot of our students will go into like data journalism. That's been kind of a new trend. Yeah, and so just to keep that in mind, or photojournalism, you're obviously probably looking at more photo editing, photojournalism type work, right? But again, there's a lot of flexibility depending on the courses you do choose to take here during your 2 years. Okay, maybe I'll give this back to you, Andres.
Yeah, so letters of recommendation. These are going to be very important as the admissions committee goes through your application. It's really giving an insight to your people who have worked with you, and is especially professors, maybe supervisors, editors, if you've already had some journalism experience, to really speak to it. So there's a few parts to it. So the first thing I'll say is that you are required to have two, but you are able to submit three in total. We highly recommend, or we highly recommend that your people writing your letters of recommendation are, one, someone who has noticed you and you have worked with them in an academic space. So that may be a professor, that might be a lecturer that you have taken multiple classes with. Just so that they can really speak upon your academic experience and that realm of work. Then if maybe you also have the possibility, if you've already been working for a while, someone who has worked with you in a professional space. So that could be, like I said, your editor, that could be a supervisor, that could be someone with whom you have worked on projects with, like a research project with. We really want to get a breadth of what other people are seeing to this one person who's filling out this application. Inside the section for the letter recommendation, it will ask you if you want to waive your right or not. You have the right to if someone were to submit a letter recommendation, you have the right to then see it as like a student record. But some individuals might prefer to that you waive that right because they want to speak truthfully. And in all honesty, let them speak truthfully, and we that confidence that is established between you and your recommender is really key. So that the committee can really take a look of everything you written in your application. So we also highly suggest tell your recommenders, hey, publish by December 1st. That way, if there's any hiccups, any problems, you're able to get it out of the way and you still have enough time by that December 16th deadline to be able to have everything submitted.
Yeah, something I do want to add to that is, as Andre said, let them know, but also there's a place in the application where you can you can add a personalized note. So I would include it in there and just let them know because when they receive that kind of invitation to submit a letter on your behalf, they'll see like the last possible deadline, which is February 3rd. They won't see the round one deadline. So it is really important to not only, maybe remind them occasionally, via email, but also in that personalized note, tell them to disregard that February 3rd deadline and say, I'm applying for that first round deadline, which is really important. and then just, tell them by when, again, Andres kind of recommended like December 1st as like the last, but again, obviously the deadline we know is December 16th, but they don't need to know, what that final deadline is. And it's always better to kind of tell them, something a bit earlier just in case. Yeah. So we'll keep going. So I included a little, I know I didn't tell Andres this, but this was a snap. I went back into your application, Andres, and I took a little screenshot of his video that he submitted. And I will say it's he made it look really nice. And obviously you see the framing that he did, and he's kind of like right in the middle. And it looks very professional, I was gonna say. So that's something you can keep in mind too, is obviously putting yourself in a background where you're not super big, that you're kind of obviously, just being mindful of presentation. And yeah, I just loved his outfit choice. It just shows your personality, Andres. So it was great to like look back on that video. But I think you submitted like the full almost 4 minutes, which I think is great. I think that definitely take advantage of those full 4 minutes to say. And Andres, maybe you can speak more to this actually.
Yeah, of course. And if anyone wants tips, feel free to come to our JPeers office hours chats on Fridays. You'll see them on the website, so we can dive even more into depth with this. But setting up just a presentable background, so like just it's more professional in that sense. The way the clothing that you wear can also make a statement. You can see I have my own like culture representing me right there. So like when we say it's a holistic approach, we're really trying to get an eye and a view of the individual who's working on this like paper, or who's being taken from all these words in this paper, and trying to really put a face and a personality to them to see how they would interact in the environment here at the J School. And yeah, I mean, just general video tips if you want to get started early. Utilize all those 4 minutes. You're introducing yourself, and you're telling them why you won't make a good candidate and what you hope to learn from the J School, as well as you really want to highlight yourself of your accomplishments. And also, if you have areas that you feel like you can really grow in, highlight that. Really showcase who you are as a person and as a student. And then I just use a tripod to just do the whole project. When it comes to working on your essays, well, that's another big part of it, right? So like you have the video portion, but also the writing portion. You have your statement of purpose, which is more on the academic side. You're really talking about what you hope to achieve, what you've already accomplished, and what you hope to achieve. Your personal history statement is something more in regards to how you got to the position you were, whether that's cultural background, your diversity of thought, your diversity of perspective, your own ethnic, cultural diversity. We really want to hear about that to really, once again, create that holistic approach to your application. And there's also supplemental essays that maybe you're talking a little bit more about, like your circumstances. If there's something that you think really showcases how you've overcome something, or something that highlights your self as a person, as an applicant for the J School, please also include it right there. And once again, feel free to come to the JPeer chat hours. We're more than happy to walk you through it and really dive deep into these like helpful sessions.
Yes, that's exactly right. I do want to add the supplemental essay too. That could be a space where, for example, if your GPA is slightly below 3.0, or your English testing, or there's some kind of or your GPA, right? Like, so speaking to maybe a gap, or something that you want to explain or elaborate on a little more. And again, barriers to, you know, um, higher education or anything that you've faced. It could be mental health, for example. I know, a lot of people might have issues related to that, or just being a parent or a veteran, so whatever kind of your background, if you want a space to kind of elaborate on how it's affected or impacted your journey thus far, definitely include it there. And we'll keep going. Work samples. So we talked a little bit about kind of the concentrations that you might choose. And again, you only can choose the one concentration. And again, this isn't, we won't really be looking at your concentration as we're like doing admissions necessarily. It's more or less just for us to really have a sense of kind of where you see yourself, where you envision yourself if you're admitted here. Um, and yeah, I would say for the work samples, we require a minimum of two and a maximum of three work samples. One sample must be nonfiction, which means it could be published or unpublished reporting, academic papers. I know Andres didn't really have relevant work experience in journalism, so he can maybe speak more to that.
Yeah, and your work samples really showcasing your abilities to create something. So I was a researcher for political science, so I just used my honors thesis to showcase this is how I can write, this is how I can showcase my ability to research, and then talking about it in my personal history statement, right, or my statement of purpose, showcasing like I've done this, and this is how I can see all the work that I've done to apply to journalism. So your work samples need not be specifically like I reported on an election. They could be just these pieces of work in which you really can showcase your capabilities for writing or for production of some type of thing. So, like Nelly said, there can a work sample could also include like an audio sample, in which you link to at suggestion, you put a link into a doc, make it into a Word doc or a PDF and submit that. And that's a way for us to be able to see what you produced as an audio sample, or even if something's connected to YouTube, for example, that's a way to be able to provide those work samples in this portion of the application. And then and now about fee waivers. So if you're a U.S. citizen or current permanent resident, there is a non-refundable application fee, $135. For everyone else applying outside the United States, it's $155. There are possibilities for fee waivers for U.S. citizens and permanent residents, but the eligibility is more detailed on the graduate division website for those who are eligible to receive one. Um, so if you have further information on that, we highly suggest that you reach out to the grad admin at berkeley.edu. And also if you'd like to reach out to us at journalism_admissions@berkeley.edu so we can provide further guidance on this, because we understand an application fee can be we don't want it to we want to work as much as possible to help you turning your application if you're trying to apply here to Cal.
Yeah, I can take this the next few slides here. So for international applicants, I just want to very briefly, and again, I think the JPeers sessions will be helpful, but there are plenty of resources on the Berkeley International Office website as well that speak specifically to, exemptions or kind of all of these requirements. But just very briefly, we require a basic degree in a country, a completed basic degree in a country region in which the official language is or is in English, but if it is not, then you are required to submit additional English language proficiency tests. That could be a TOEFL or an IELTS. For TOEFL, our suggested minimum is 105, and for IELTS, suggested is 7.5. However, we do want to like make clear that if you don't meet these suggested minimums, and your application is complete, letters of rec, works, everything is there, then we will still review your application. And so there is still a possibility of you being admitted, even if you don't meet these suggested scores, because again, they are suggested. There are some like strict minimum requirements, but you can take a look at those on the graduate admissions website. Um, but again, we do really look at holistic admissions review, and so we don't want to say no or yes if you have a lot of relevant experience or you really can contribute in other ways. We really do our best to not, we don't require GRE, so there's a lot of reasons that we're not strict on certain quantitative data points in our admissions process. The last thing I want to highlight, which is important to a lot of international applicants, is the STEM qualification. So we are a STEM program, and we're considered under digital communication, media, multimedia. classification. This means that you're eligible for, on top of the 1 year OPT, an extension of up to 48 months. So this can make a really big difference for our international students that, would like to stay in the US and continue their journalistic, their journalism careers in the US a little longer. So yeah. And now I think we're going to go to funding, and we'll keep this kind of brief, but we'll leave a lot of room for I'm going to try to get through this in 5, 10 minutes, because a lot of this is on the website. So tuition and fees, again, it's on the registrar page. It's also on our cost and funding page. As you can see, these are estimates. We won't actually know the university doesn't publish the actual numbers until like June, July of the year that you're attending. So next June, July for 2025, fall 2025. So just to be aware that these are not like the final numbers. So same thing with, if you do get a scholarship or a fellowship, these numbers might change a little bit because that we don't actually have the exact numbers. I think the key here though is the PDS, which Andres can probably speak to, is the PDST and the NST. Do you want to speak to that, Andres?
Yeah, so the NST, so the non-resident supplemental tuition, that's for students who are not California residents. And that's what we want to just make everyone aware of is that once again, because it is a public university in California, those students who are residents of here are pretty much saying you're already paying taxes, so there's no need for you to pay this supplemental tuition fee. But for out-of-state students and international students, that fee is also attached to your tuition, as well as the professional degree supplemental tuition. That is for all students. It's a professional program, and because of that, the University of California as a whole says, okay, it's a professional program for these students, so that we're going to add on to that a professional degree supplemental tuition. So that's also going to be included in your progress. But as you can see from there, this is the layout of how much you're paying. Health insurance fee, just as a note, all students on campus are required to have some type of insurance. If you have your own personal type of insurance, feel free to like look into the SHIP or waiver office. So that way you're able to say, okay, I have insurance that covers to an equal amount. If not, then you are able to participate in the student health insurance program.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, a kind of a fun thing here is the class pass fee, like transit. It's great. Essentially, so if you are commuting, and essentially a lot of our students do. So I know some students will have a car, but a lot of our students might not have a car. And so just being able to use the BART and which is our metro system here, and other public, the bus, it's very, very convenient. We're located in downtown Berkeley, like metro stop, and it's just like a 5-minute walk from campus. So it is really convenient to get to campus, and that fee will allow you to each semester, you can commute as much as you want. So if you have an internship or, that's in San Francisco or, wherever it may be in the Bay, yeah, that tends to be a really good deal for, public transit for our students. Yeah. And so also keep in mind this is per semester. So sometimes students look at this and they're like, oh, it's the total, or it's for the year. And we're a 2-year program, so it would be this times 4. But again, keeping in mind that in your second year, if you're a domestic student that is out of state, you would qualify for that waiver of the the NST your second year, because you would qualify after a year of residing in California as a California resident. So for international students, that fee is always going to be, you're always going to pay that NST. And again, that's just because we're Berkeley. Berkeley is a public institution. And so that's kind of how that works. Okay, so really quickly, just so that you guys are aware, when you're completing your application, there is a section called Departmental Grant Application. So this is going to be all the pertinent info that we need, just so we have a better picture of your financial need and Yeah, and so just so you guys are aware, all students, all admitted students, they're automatically considered for merit-based departmental funding. So merit is, everyone is going to be considered for that. Scholarships, right? Merit-based scholarships. For need-based departmental funding, you must complete this section. So this is really important. Um, Domestic students, on top of completing this section, also need to submit FAFSA in order for us to consider giving any need-based aid to you. So just keep that in mind. And FAFSA is most likely, some of the dates it kind of changes, but it'll be open to all students by December of 2024. Some schools have early access to this, like from October 1st, but most people will have access to this by December. Lastly, for the essay section, the need-based funding essay, please do try to include as much detail as possible. Again, because we really use this to better assess your financial situation and need. And this can help us in determining, in addition to FAFSA and other parts of the application, kind of where you're at and how we can, potentially bridge the gaps if you are admitted here and choose to enroll here next fall. Okay, so investing in your future. I think these are really like very straightforward tips, but start and plan to understand and locate your funding options as soon as possible. So if you really want to make it your goal to come here, and if you're admitted to actually make it here next fall, then you really need to start planning for all sources of funding, right? So not just departmental funding from us, not just funding from Berkeley, but really looking at all the options because most students, they don't just look at one source of funding, right? Most students, even if they get a fellowship that's fully funded, they're also working part-time. They're also doing a bunch of other things. So it's, one source of funding, that's never the right way to kind of approach it. And then, yeah, so this is just something that you really have to start thinking about like now if you haven't already started doing that. So I would say the two greatest resources is really the Graduate Division Guide to External Funding. They just have they have a long list of scholarships, grants, lots of different opportunities, fellowships that you can look at that are both internal in Berkeley, but also external. So this also applies to international students. A lot of the scholarships are specific to international students too. So, don't feel like, oh my God, this is only for domestic students and FAFSA and all of that, but there are opportunities for international students there too. So please do take a look at those. They're very comprehensive guides. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about those. The opportunities I do want to spend some time on are the ones that we do offer, because a lot of you ask us this. So first year resources include departmental aid, which can be merit-based and need-based, as we discussed. Andres can kind of speak to the fact that we do offer fully funded scholarships, which we call fellowships. These are very competitive, however, and are a mix of merit and need-based aid so it really is something we offer on a very competitive basis to kind of the top candidates that we have in our pool. So Andres, yeah, maybe you can speak more to that and then other opportunities at the school.
Yeah, sure. So for funding opportunities, please keep in mind that every dollar pretty much at pretty much all most universities here in California, those dollars have to be accounted for. So sometimes we have information or finances where we could help out larger swaths of students, but sometimes there's donors and places where funds are raised for students to be able to say, hey, or the journalism school can say, hey, we really want to give this person a full ride. So, like for example, I'm a dean's fellow, which means my program, my tuition, my fees, my insurance is all covered plus I get an additional stipend. But there's strings attached to that I'm in good academic standing, that I'm performing very well as my background being a first generation student, being a resident. And we can definitely understand like there's a few other fellowships. There's one that's called the Jubilee Fellowship. And there's one for like students who are coming from sub-Saharan Africa. And these fellowships really do help to alleviate the financial burden of an education like a master's program. But please keep in mind that there's also different opportunities that may be more accessible. So there's those departmental aid. So like these are scholarships, these are grants from like let's say the journalism school, or maybe even if you're applying in a concurrent program from that school as well, where they're more based on your merit, what you've been able to do. There's also some that are based on your financial situation, loans. So for domestic students, please make sure you fill out your FAFSA forms because that will be able to help determine your financial aid status as to in pertinence or relation to the school. Um, Pardon me, international students, there's Empower and there's a few other student loans. If you're looking into a student loan, please look into how they'll affect you in interest wise and et cetera. So we really want you to do that research. There's academic student employment. So if you're a student here on campus, you also have the ability to, let's say, be a teaching assistant or a grader for a class. So please keep in mind that these can sometimes be competitive, and typically first semester students aren't becoming these TAs or these readers. You can apply your second semester and then eventually your third and your fourth as a way to both get fee remission. So your tuition, part of it gets paid off, but also you're paid a consistent salary every month in that employed position. So that's one other way a lot of students get by. External funding and awards, off campus employment. There's also something called work study, where students who have a financial aid package where they're eligible to apply and work. That's also something that they can do on campus. Few other things. So work study opportunities have included the investigative reporting program, student reporters. So I kind of mentioned it towards the beginning, but we have a program, a center associated with the school, the J School, where they focus on investigative reporting, and there's some employment opportunities. And then eventually during your time here at the J School, you could actually become a reporter with them rather than working on a project of another reporter. There's the Advanced Media Institute, of which we have more information online. Freelancing, I know that's a very scary thing for some newer journalists out there, but there's opportunities to like do photos. There's an opportunity, and I would say like during the first month you start to really get comfortable in how you approach freelancing and how you can really make that supplemental income. Departmental academic student employment, like I already mentioned. Course tutors, so there's a few tutors on campus, so writing tutors, math tutors, etc., that you're also eligible as a student to work for. And JPeers, which is this job, where there's a limited opportunities to work for this School of Journalism. We also suggest that students, if they have any questions, whether it comes to like their visa status and working on campus, the best people who are always going to know how to help you out best is the Berkeley International Office, commonly referred to as BIO. So if your funding opportunities, you feel like there's some type of question that you have related to it, all international applicants, we suggest reach out to BIO and see how your status will affect possible academic or just out of or outside of campus employment. We also have the Berkeley, California Local Journalism Fellowship, which is doing journalism very locally here in California. And it tends to be more like second years applying for it. First years at the end of their second semester may sometimes apply to it, but that's just an additional kind of like source of funding to be able to continue with your journalism studies. And yeah, the best time to apply is now. Like, we just recently received a gift of $10 million, making it the largest in our history. So that translates, and especially with the work of our Dean Gita Anand, of focusing on that, giving those funds back to students. So student awards, there's thankfully more opportunities to award financial aid to incoming students. Traveling reporting grants, if let's say you're in a class where you want to have the opportunity to study in Costa Rica, there's grants available to help support students on a limited basis. Internship funding support. So this past year, and I'm sure during our application session with Betsy, that will be even more informative. But some internships, if they're unpaid, the school will use funds to help you meet those demands during the summer. So if you really wanted to work at a specific place, but it was unpaid, you can work with the journalism school to still be paid and still have the opportunity to make ends meet. There's also emergency funds that are not only just tied with the journalism school, but there's a few associated with like the basic needs center on campus, or even like the financial aid office for extra circumstances in and at the university. So really, we really encourage a lot of students to apply this year because there's just more opportunity for us to be able to help more people out. And that's just the goal of, I'd say, being a student here at the J School, of like, you really do get a sense of connection, that whether you're from like Denver, Colorado, or whether you're from Taiwan, or whether you come from Australia, there's a good sense that like we're all trying to help each other out as not only students, but also faculty really like wanting to be invested in our education. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really, really great. So we're actually ending the portion where we do all the talking. So this is just letting you know what's kind of coming up in the future. So some of our virtual events, I did refer to you guys to the next upcoming info session, which will be featuring Betsy Raitt, who is our Director of Career Development and has been over the last few years, and she's amazing and super well connected. So that'll be next Tuesday, 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then we have a graduate diversity admissions fair, which is open to all. And that'll be more focused on kind of the diversity that makes us, unique, and kind of how we aim to foster belonging and inclusion, and really also, looking, as I said, identify and recruit the best the next generation of journalists that, look very different perhaps, and have different perspectives than the journalists that came before us. And so really just, yeah, so we're going to really focus on that. And we'll have current students and maybe an alum on that panel too. So we can just kind of focus on their experiences in the journalism school. So yeah, and then save the date, open house, November 11th through 14th. So if you are, I already had a student that said that an interested student who's in Canada, and she's trying to plan her trip around open house. So we always have people coming from far away. So just make sure, I know that that's like already a month, 6 weeks out. So just keep in mind that, if you do want to plan that trip that week, will be open house events, sit in, so you'll be able to sit in on classes. We'll have hybrid events too. So we'll record these sessions live, and you'll be able to kind of have access to these events too. Panels with current students, alumni, a mixer where you'll be able to connect with our alumni and faculty. So just a lot of fun events where you'll really get to experience what life at Berkeley journalism is actually like. So definitely save that date or that week, November 11th through 14th. And then we'll have just a lot more upcoming events too. Andres is actually working on the faces of journalism, and so he can maybe speak more to that. But that's also exciting, and that'll be happening in October, and that'll be so we have a lot of events coming up in October for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, so please come out. And your next steps here, just we've been saying it all the entire time. Connect with us. Come out to our events. The Faces of the J School. I really want to make it a week long, or at least have as many sessions as possible for people to be able to find a community or find journalists and students that they can relate to. So check out that website, our website, to find it. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat in a second, as well as come to our weekly drop-in admissions office hours. If you're an international student, we understand that, and we're going to try and find a time to see if it's more convenient for you rather than just California specific time. And remember to submit that application by December 16th. I'm going to also put another link in the chat just so for today's attendance at the webinar. But yeah.
Yeah, and this QR code is actually to the drop-in. It's the registration link to the office hours. So, but it is also available on our admissions page under admissions events. So this is just kind of if you guys wanted to see that QR code. And then lastly, yeah, follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Especially Instagram and LinkedIn, we're always posting a lot of content about, what's going on at the J School. And like, so if you're really looking for more kind of testimonials and just like all the fun things happening on campus, then I would definitely recommend just staying in touch with us that way too. And then we'll also put kind of admissions events and like updates of like what's to come there. And yeah, and then this is the info, as Andres and I have kind of been saying. Andres is really taking ownership of the J Pierce admissions. He's really helping out with our admissions team. So I would reach out to him at the J Pierce underscore admissions at berkeley.edu. Even if you have like application questions, I think it makes more sense. He'll probably be more able to get back to you quicker at the J Pierce email. Journalism admissions, I would say if you kind of have like broader questions, feel free to reach out to me there. But the J Pierce email will kind of be where I would say you're going to get kind of more specific, detailed insights into the program, what to expect, things like that. And so, yeah, maybe we can turn it over. That was my last slide. So we can turn it over to you guys. I see that there are some questions in the chat box too. Andres, do you maybe want to moderate a
Yeah,
little?
sure. So we'll go ahead and make sure that we, even though we're going to reach the top of the meeting right now, try and do our best to answer. And if, for longer and in-depth discussions, obviously, feel free to reach back out to us. So go ahead, Andrew. And then I guess we can get to Tatiana right after Andrew.
Awesome. Hi, Andres. Hi, Nelly. I just have a quick question about the references from one of the earlier slides. So, being out of school for about 2 years, would you recommend only having professional references or a mix of professional and academic if I feel I have, both that could speak to me well?
I'd highly suggest that one definitely be your professional because they've been known you more recently and can really attest to like your work ethic and your experiences there. They've also may have more personal insight as to who you are in that moment. But if you have from 2 years ago that academic recommender that you're interested in, if you've known them for a while and you think that they can really speak to your ability as a student and what your participation was and how you excelled in their classrooms, I believe that to be still very insightful and very educational, unless Nelly disagrees.
Cool, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So I'll go ahead and take on Tatiana's question. So does journalism work experience affect the decision on funding, especially merit-based? I believe I'll ask Nelly more on that because she knows more of the fundings.
Hmm. Sure. Wait, I'm trying to see. What was the question?
Sorry, the question was, does journalism work experience affect the decision on funding, especially merit-based funding?
Um, I I don't I think it depends. I don't think that, okay, for example, let's give Andres as an example. He didn't have journalism relevant experience, right? Or, very specifically relevant. So I think it's more of like how you package yourself and kind of, how clear are you on your motivations for joining the Berkeley journalism, kind of what are you hoping to get out of it? Just having clarity of goals. So you could like have no relevant work experience or, but if you worked at a student newspaper and then, or you are doing things kind of in your own free time or doing like kind of freelance work or, I think there's other ways that we can kind of assess merit. It's not purely like how much journalism experience you have. Um, so yeah, does that help a little bit? I wouldn't say it won't be like that's not exactly how we look at it. And also the way that we review you is there's an admissions committee, and as part of that, you'll have two faculty reviewers review your application. At least one of them has to be related to the concentration you selected in the application. So that's another thing to think about is that's why I was saying with the work samples, like really being strategic about and packaging yourself in the right way to kind of sell yourself for kind of, how you see yourself in this program and making the most of it and leveraging your, previous experience, your background, you know, all of that good stuff.
All right. And then I guess her other question is it possible to combine different types of scholarships and grants, etc., a merit-based with a need-based and a GA, which I'm not too sure what they're referring to as the GA, but yeah, so scholarships and grants, that is money that you don't have to pay back. right? So if you're receiving it from the journalism school or some other department on campus, that you can have all those mixes of these grants and these scholarships or fellowships, etc. Um, but what it really does affect more than anything is like your student loans. If your financial aid package, if you get more grants, the less loans you get because there's a certain cap of what your estimated cost of attendance is. And we're going to go more in depth on that during our funding webinar with our amazing like director or one of our staff here at the J School. So yeah, there shouldn't be any problem with that. And we encourage to have that diverse portfolio to be able to fund the education. All
I
right.
do want to answer one question I
Yeah,
see
go
because
ahead.
I think that's helpful. The from Aditya, would I be able to switch my track if I've selected documentary and gotten through? I assume you mean like if you've been admitted. So you would have a chance to to change that track if you are first admitted for documentary. The only issue is going the opposite direction. So documentary to another track is easier than the opposite. Yeah. But yes, you do have a chance you will have a chance to be able to change that. So if you're admitted to doc, and you say, actually, I did some time to think and I actually want to do multimedia instead, like video for the web, yeah, that would be fine. We would just need to know that as soon as possible, essentially, because that would affect, other selections and the wait list and all that stuff. So,
And then I want to answer Lucy's because I was typing it out, but I think it'll be easier for me to just say it aloud. For applicants who have taken the GRE and think their score could support their candidacy, can these be submitted? So you're more than welcome to submit your GRE results. We're not turning you away from doing that, but I cannot explicitly state that that is going to affect your candidacy, whether positively or negatively, mainly because we do not require it of our students. I'd say that the majority who don't really turn in a GRE and they're not penalized for doing it. If you feel like your score and what you have done in the GRE is really successful and really showcasing your academic work, well, that can make you stand out, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it is an explicit form of determining your candidacy and your rank with just the GRE. And then when do decisions on admissions come out? Typically late to mid-March is when most students will know. And if you are asked beforehand and this would be entirely rare if it were to happen for an interview, just because of the number of applicants and the process for it. If you are asked for one, that's not a sign of admissions. That's just trying to get more information. But also don't think of it as a good or bad thing. Like, oh, I did or I didn't get an interview. Sometimes some candidates we just want to get a little bit more information on. Um, any last questions
oh,
before?
yeah, that is
Oh,
another, sorry, the reason I want to just quickly address this because I have had students ask this question. So we won't begin reviewing applications until after round two. So, you know, yeah, so that's something to keep in mind is sometimes people say like, "Oh, can I submit if I submit earlier, do I have a better chance?" And I mean, if you submit in round one versus round two, there's a difference, but not like if you submit tomorrow versus December 1st. So, I mean, I guess that's just something to keep in mind is like, obviously, you want to complete your application as early as possible just to make sure that you have enough time to make sure it's complete and you have your letters of recon and everything else. But yeah, there's no difference. We won't start reviewing the application until after all applications are submitted after that round two, February 3rd.
all right. So I think with that session, we're gonna go ahead and that final question, we're gonna go ahead and close up. I do know that a few others may have a few more specific. J Peers. Yes. So I'm putting J Peers underscore at admissions.
Yeah, J peers just means journalism peers. So if you're wondering what the J is,
Yeah.
journalism peers, J peers.
So
Yeah.
with that, thank you everyone for joining us on today's webinar. And we really do hope that we were able to give you some fruitful information. If you have any lingering questions or very specific questions, please email Nelly at journalism_admissions at berkeley.edu. If you have application related questions, feel free to do the J peers underscore admissions at berkeley.edu. We are here to help everyone out, and please keep a lookout on our calendar for more events. This is a team that is definitely working to make sure that we are getting as much information out and to make this cycle as as stressful as it is, as doing our part to really be able to help play a hand in your future. So thank you for joining us today. And with that, go Bears.
Thank you, everyone.